Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to round 2 of Bisu vs. Jaedong. So right now we have yet another Bisu vs. Jaedong game to follow up after the previous one we saw. Another really awesome game. I really like this game because it's super duper solid play by Bisu, by Jaedong. I think every single time I have ever said either Bisu or Jaedong, I've messed up on the first try. That's like impossible. I'm so fucking bad. Alright, I'm gonna work on that, I promise. But it runs in the plot family, just calling things by the wrong name. So again, we have Bisu vs. Jaedong from the Pro League coming up here. This is not the All-Star Pro League. This was one of the fifth set games of Bisu against Jaedong on Destination as well. And I wanted to stay consistent and have 2 games on that same map because I like it quite a bit. And I'm not looking at the camera right now because I'm busy adjusting the size, because for some reason people really like widescreen and Procaster really does not like widescreen. So without further ado, let's jump right into the game. Once again, any of you who are using any colored text, change it all back to white, so that way we can go right back to pink in case there's any errors going on. So fantastic. We have yet another Bisu vs. Jaedong game on Destination. And in particular, what I like about this game is Bisu's mid-game plan. This actually is one of my absolute favorite things to do as Protoss against Zerg. You end up taking a really early third expansion with Corsair Reaver and transitioning into ground. It's the best. And notice how similar these openings are by both players. As Zerg, I mean, I really like doing the usual early pool and then expand. I really think it's a bit too hard to hold this expansion, especially from probe harass. And look, this is a really nice job by Jaedong. Don't overreact to those probes. Really, a drone can take out a probe if the drone gets the first shot. So a lot of times what I'll do, if I'm having trouble holding this expansion to a probe, is I'll bring 2 drones, and then I shoot the probe once with each drone and immediately send one home. Because in fact, it's a lot easier to set that hatchery down if you have just 1 drone there, instead of 2, because then you can kind of manner yourself with your drone. I like this placement a little bit less. I mean, notice how this has changed over time. This is a much earlier game than the one we just saw. I don't know how much this back has changed, but I would imagine that Bisu is going to try to wall that off, considering that cannon placement. I don't like this cannon placement nearly as much as the first game. This is just the best. And then the usual sort of wall off. This sort of timing is something I really like. If you see an overpool on another map, to go cannon, then Nexus, and then another cannon. But it looks like Jaedong isn't going to be doing any sort of early aggression, so it's not really of too much concern for Bisu. But really, you should worry about placement a lot. Like, it's a huge deal as Protoss. In fact, if you're on a new map, what you should do is you should just get a friend, and you should try out a whole bunch of wall-ins, and you should say, okay, now try to run around here, try to run around here and here. And really, if you just save the game and reload it, you can do a whole bunch really fast. Let's get these guys off. Big X with my cursor through those guys. Alright, great. Getting them off. This is also really nice by Bisu, just leaving 2 probes. God almighty, 2 Zerglings at the front. Dude, how does that happen? I'm the worst. Dude, how is this possible? Alright, cool. Jesus. Alright, he's making a cybernetics core. God. I'm interested to see if he's walled off the back of his minerals right there. That's a real popular technique on Destination. So that way it kind of helps it prevents the run-bys of the Zerglings. And notice that I got Zerglings right on the first time. The Flam. So, we have a Zealot coming out early. I like this. Early Zealots are awesome. Any sort of pressure against the player early. In fact, a lot of times recently we've seen Stork get 3 Zealots and then push out whenever he's doing this very standard Corsair play. Another really awesome thing to do as well. Again, notice Bisu with the very early core. God. Bisu with the very early assimilator after the core. I skipped like 8 words. I just went straight for the end of the sentence. Always sprinting to the finish. So, again, very, very standard play. I'm a little interested because this Hydralisk Den is early by Bisu. Normally we see the Spire finish first, and then the hatcheries get thrown down, and then the Hydralisk Den. Yeah, I dislike this placement a little bit more if you're going for a big ground army, but as we'll see later, that's not what Bisu's going for. So be a little conscious of that. I don't exactly want to say that. Oh God, I just saw in the chat everyone spammed in pink that I said Bisu has the Hydralisk Den. Dude, just don't listen to what I say. Listen to what I mean. Waps. So we have what was I talking about? Placement, that's right. So, be mindful of this placement. I'm not really going to say necessarily if it's good or bad, but just to note what the later plans are and how this is going to play into that. Yay, I love this sort of early aggression. Really, really good. This is the sort of stuff that's going to throw your opponent off just a little bit. And this is what I like. We have the robotics facility coming down. We're going to see a Reaver in a little bit. Bisu, in general, if you watch a lot of his games, for instance, if you watch Shine versus Bisu on Eye of the Storm, Bisu really loves getting a very early third expansion. He loves the very early third expansions. And this is a kind of play that was really unique when I saw it at the time. The first time I saw him do it was Bisu against Jaedong in their epic encounter on Blue Storm, where Bisu was harassing all game long, and then somehow Jaedong just magically won in the end. He used this very similar strategy. Notice this cannon was canceled, almost certainly because he sees all this early pressure going on. Now here's something that Jaedong is famous for. Jaedong is known for doing everything normal. I mean, we have the general look of things. There's the 5th hatchery going down. There's a 4th one at the natural that we don't see. But look at this stuff going on. We see the early push with speed Hydralisks with range. They might have range. It might just be speed. I can't quite tell, given the fact that, the Zealots were right there. But now that gives a little bit of reason as to why that was such an early Hydralisk den. So this is an example of something similar to what we saw in the first game. This is the opposite. Bisu, in the first game, did everything very normal, but threw in these Zealots with the early +1 attack and speed. In this game, we have Jaedong doing a very normal sort of 5 hatcheries with Hydralisks and holding off with Scourge, but he's doing a Hydralisk push early. That's a sort of rearranging of what's going on. You're not changing anything, you're incorporating something new and then planning out everything totally normally. I mean, if you just look at this mini-map, everything is totally normal right there. But we have this cute little push going on early. This is the sort of stuff that Jaedong's known for, is these weird aggressive timings where you would think, yeah, clearly no one's going to attack me right now because I'm totally safe. And then Jaedong goes ahead and kills you. A good example of that, actually, an amazing example of that is Kal versus Jaedong on Tornado. Oh man, that was awesome. Jaedong just smashed right into Kal's face. Oh man, this is just wonderful, wonderful play by Bisu. I love this so much. So everything looks a little bit normal. I'm hoping we get another look back here, because now we're starting to see why this is more walled off than in the previous Bisu vs. Jaedong game we saw. Because right now, this wall off doesn't want cracks because it wants Reavers behind it. By the way, if you guys could please take your text off pink, because it keeps making me turn over and people are just typing in caps about Kal and Jaedong. Keep it in the white, please. Only go for the pink in emergencies. So this is, now watch this. Watch the way Bisu does this. He's going to be doing harassment with the Corsair and the Reaver, but then he's going to use it as an opportunity to expand. It's so cool. It's so awesome. So this is a nice, usual little harass. This is the sort of stuff that Bisu became famous for, is that he just established Protoss vs. Zerg as a matchup about having control and putting the pressure on. Oh, no! Run home, little Reaver. Come on, you'll get there. Go, little guy. You got this, man. Don't worry about it. Oh, that poor thing. Look at him. He wants to get home so bad. So, I mean, that's not the sort of thing that Bisu's famous for, is for losing his shuttles like an idiot. But, I mean, putting tons of pressure on his opponent. And I would have liked to seen the expansion happen a little bit earlier. But what's great, and you're going to see this, is Bisu takes this expansion and abuses that narrow bridge. And he uses the Reavers and eventually Templar to defend it incredibly well. Incredibly well. Uh-oh, looks like someone's going to get banned from the chat. Uh-oh, here he is. Alright, I'm stopping this. If anyone is in the channel, we have a little bit of a spammer going on here. Oh, here we go. Oh, banned. Forever banned. Behemoth has been banned by the moderator. Oh, God, I love the power. Did you just see that? That was so cool. Oh, I can't wait to do that. Oh, man. This is the best in the universe. Good game. Day 9, 1-0. I'm seriously like top 10 Icy Cup on banning. Oh, God, like Olympic WCG rank. It's the best. Here is Bisu continuing with the harass. And one thing, again, this is part of the reason why I love Bisu's play, is his abuse of destination. Just this map just affords this kind of harassment. It's just amazing to see the sort of patterns that Bisu's weaving in and out of all this stuff with. Again, I'm starting to be concerned that I confuse this game with another one, but I'm almost certain I recalled Bisu taking this expansion a little earlier. He definitely could have taken it earlier. That's why I like this Corsair Reaver opening, is it lets you take an expansion really, really easily if it has a narrow entrance. This is what Bisu did on Blue Storm. This is what you can do on maps with island expansions. This sort of play was very popular on Andromeda. I really love the way that Bisu ends up taking advantage of that Corsair Reaver, not just as a harassment thing, but as an aggressive way to expand and continue to put pressure on Zerg. And this, look at this wonderful troop movement by Bisu. And by the way, I really need to stop and talk about Jaedong a little bit. I'm just like, Bisu. Look at this wonderful troop movement by Bisu. Moving up here, putting a little pressure on, moving right down here with the drop. Great stuff going on. Now, Bisu is responding in the... God almighty. Now, Jaedong is responding in the exact way that you want to. He's not overreacting. Notice how Jaedong has not pushed into this middle of the map. This is where you'd be pushing early on in most Protoss vs. Zergs, but Bisu's not... Wow, Jaedong's not doing anything like that early on. Jaedong's staying back as much as possible, so that way he can hold off any sort of harassment. This sort of dropship harass is going to do some damage. You do want to minimize it. So this is a little bit unfortunate that Bisu is going to end up getting this expansion delayed. And now I'm starting to realize that perhaps the game that I'm recalling where Bisu took this really early is probably another one. But Bisu did end up doing a very similar build here. And something to keep in mind is how early you can take this one. Really like that play. And also what's super fun about the way Bisu's playing is it's so friggin' aggressive. Jaedong really does not get to cross this line at all. And even with that, Jaedong's having a little bit of trouble defending this back expansion to these amazing harassing capabilities. So this is a lesson for Zerg users to think about how all these things are positioned, and look, only now is Jaedong starting to move across. Now that he has a huge amount of Hydralisks and clearly has the upper hand as a force, that's when he feels comfortable moving out. Bisu is going to have to pull back a little bit because of all these lurkers behind there. Go, Gadget Jaedong. And this is another example. Oh, God, that's right. I do remember when those lurkers finished, and I was like, lol, Bisu. He just left the lurker eggs, and he's like, dude, these are going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. And apparently he was correct. So, anyways. When you're in a position where you're facing a whole lot of harassment, like with all these dropships and all these Reavers going around, don't panic. Even if you lose a few drones, harassing is expensive. I mean, even a shuttle with 4 Dark Templar, that's 125 for each Dark Templar in minerals, 200 for the shuttle, so that's 700 minerals, and that's 400 gas. If it doesn't really do much, or if it only does some damage, that's still a loss for Protoss. That is also the reason why in Jaedong against Bisu on Blue Storm, Jaedong was able to take so much punishment and still seemingly magically winning. And look at this. This is my favorite part of this whole game. Look at this. Drops Zealots at this point and runs back along here to the expansion. Oh my God, look at that. I saw this and I almost flipped a desk. I couldn't believe it. That's amazing. I literally never, ever would have thought of that in a million years. This is just so great. Again, Bisu's entire game plan revolves around punishing the Zerg so hard. Bisu's really good at alternating between lots of pressure with harassment and then lots of expanding. He doesn't use a lot of traditional techniques of timing and expansion using a really big army. Oh, you can see the YouTube bar. Hiding it, hiding it. Oh my god, guys, we're almost at 500 viewers. Quick, call your mothers and grandmothers and be like, quick, Mom, get on your technology and log in. Oh, we got to get over 500. All right, 497. Come on, Mom, do it. Oh, man. So, also notice this troop movement here by Bisu. By Jaedong. By Jaedong. I'm practicing, guys. This is still the beta. Oh, over 500. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just hit 500 viewers. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and the greatest extents of my beard for watching in today. It'll keep going on. It's day 9 daily. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Look at this wonderful, wonderful positioning by Jaedong. Jaedong is starting. He's starting to edge forward, but he's not going to overcommit forward. He's not going to come here and just crush like the mid. He can't, because any move around here is going to screw him up. He's just edging forward a little bit. By the way, I'm pointing to the mini-map, and I have me up on the screen. Let me hide so I can go back and you can see the mini-map. He's not pushing up north here at all. He's staying really tight back. And the big move, the big mid-game move that Jaedong's going to do is just securing the other side of his double bridge. That's a very significant position to be in. A very, very significant position to be in. And unfortunately, I have to clear the chat, and I might have to disable it in a little bit because we're getting just a bit too much lag right now, according to the channels. Actually, I will go ahead and disable disable the chat briefly if I can figure out how to do it. Dude, I don't know how to disable the chat. Oh man. Okay. All right, guys. Just don't type very much, and we'll just keep focusing on the game. And if you're having any issues, just go to Team Liquid and watch it in the minimum size. Actually, yeah, I am going to disable this. All right, guys. Now you get the chance to watch me disable the stream. Here we go. We're going into my account. We're going to go ahead and disable chat just a little bit. And don't worry, I am going to re-enable it when we get the chance to do the Q&A afterwards, because I don't want to lock anybody out. So my sincerest apologies to any of you who are watching this in a future on-demand VOD, because I would hate the idea that you're getting this huge interruption in your viewing experience, but that's okay, because you get to listen to the sultry voice of Day 9. Okay, allow it, allow it, allow it. Okay, allow it, allow it, allow it. Ooh, turn off the audio monitor. And chat. I really wish I knew how to disable this chat a little bit better. Broadcast live. I know there was a disable chat button somewhere in there. Alright, if I don't figure this out in just 1 minute, I'm just going to have to end it. Ho! Alright, nice. Disabling the chat. Going back to the game, sincerest apologies for that delay, and have no fear, it will definitely be on in a little bit. So we do see that there's this big, it's a huge benefit for Jaedong to just have this double bridge secured. That's a great spot to be in, because then any sort of little pushes that are coming down here don't risk splitting up Jaedong's forces. Because that was a huge danger that Bisu actually encountered when Bisu was playing against Shine. Shine cut Bisu's units in half. Ooh, yeah, killing the dropship. Always good to do. Shine managed to cut off Bisu, and Bisu was in a world of hurt when his units were split up. And again, we have a big emphasis of Bisu just on expanding. I'm really interested to go back into Bisu's base and just get a count on these gateways. A lot of times you'll see when a player gets 3 bases like this, they go up to 9, 10, sometimes 11 gateways. But Bisu stays on 6 or 7 a lot of times. For instance, in the first game we saw, he stayed on 6 for quite some time. As a result, he's able to expand a lot and continue to harass a lot. And Jaedong, on the other hand, is just totally holding his own. Jaedong is not overreacting. Look at this attack timing. The only time that Jaedong is moving forward is when he can crunch this middle army. The whole reason that Jaedong's able to do that is because he wasn't panicking and he wasn't overreacting to any of this early game harassment. Notice how late these Mutalisks are. Really, really late Mutalisks, given the typical progression of the 5-hatch Hydralisk into Mutalisk openings that we see almost in every single Protoss vs. Zerg. Notice how late those are. And that's all to do with the fact that Jaedong was being very, very defensive with all those Hydralisks. He wasn't overreacting. He wasn't overextending. And only when he's about to push, that's when he's getting the Mutalisks. Great, great job by Jaedong. Go Jaedong. Oh, yeah. And look, the instant that Jaedong is getting a good foothold, all the harassment's pretty much been held off. And there's this worry of Bisu getting a stronghold on the other side of the double bridge. Jaedong just attacks, kills it, done. End of story for Bisu. Really nice job by Jaedong. I mean, just notice how he's been so impenetrable to harassment. And also, he took this bottom expansion not too early. You don't want to risk doing that against a player who's being very harassment heavy. And especially when you're starting to take that, just opening up all these lines, like mining out that back really early on is very, very key. A lot of players are going to forget to do that because it's so easy to walk down there and expand. But not Jaedong, because, you know, he's like #1 on the Kespa and that sort of thing. Now, at this point in the game, I would tend to start fast-forwarding. I would tend to say very clearly Bisu is at a disadvantage. Jaedong's gotten the upper hand by resisting that harassment for so long and clutching down on this center. Obsessing over these little moves is not going to be the key. It's obsessing over all these little early game timings. And the fact that Jaedong did that little early push with the Hydralisks, getting that very early Hydralisk den that I claimed Bisu got, getting that really early Hydralisk den is not the significant part either. It's how he held down in that mid-game period. And here's the usual sort of thing that Jaedong's known for, is being very, very aggressive, having no fear at pushing in as much as possible at the front. I really think that there should be a little bit more stuff spread out here. It's a little bit spotty there. You really want to keep spreading out, especially with Bisu. I mean, if you can look at this mini-map, there's a little sliver of fog right there. And this is actually a very vulnerable point. Any place that's along cliffs, this is a good path for shuttles to just move down here and then come to this corner and then drop down to harass. So having vision there is especially important. Bisu is going to have a real hard time harassing this. And notice, all of Jaedong's forces are not sprinting up to this middle area. Jaedong has enough forces that he can control the double bridge, but notice we saw forces up here, we have forces down here. You'll notice a little bit of extended creep there because of a sunken colony. You can't let your guard up when your opponent has demonstrated that he's built even one speed shuttle. More really good stuff by Jaedong, just keeping an eye on this back alley. And again, this is also part of the reason why I love Destination. Even if you're contained at the front, you can just sweep around here to the back and then start pushing out here. I do think Bisu could have gotten this expansion much earlier, as you probably heard me say like 1,000 times at the start. But Jaedong really putting the pressure on, and Bisu not panicking. Nothing here looks like any panic moves. Setting up a really stable force here. He's not pushing, desperately trying to kill this. He's just busy setting up the top right. Wonderful play. I love watching Bisu and Jaedong play. Really incredible, incredible players. One thing that's significant to note about the way you see Jaedong lose, he only ever loses in super dramatic games. or he loses in some way that you go, oh, well, that was stupid. I'll come back to that in just a second. But for now, notice this very careful push by Bisu, positioning things right here on the other sides of the refineries. Totally not panicking. This sort of not panicking is what I was really impressed with when I saw Hogel play last night against Flash and Intermind. By the way, that's like a total spoiler if you haven't seen those games, but just very, very calm, very deliberate play. And that's exactly what we see Bisu doing. And this is maybe a little bit getting out of line. This I don't like. I mean, getting control of your double bridge is really important, but you've just left this entire right side completely and totally vulnerable. Great troop movement by Jaedong. Look at that. When this attack got killed, Jaedong retreated back here, not back to the middle to desperately control the double bridge. He didn't keep reinforcing there. He pulled back here, again, making sure, okay, I'm cool with harassment. I'm not going to die to harassment. And then he's going to swing back up here and crush it, just like we saw in the mid-game. See, look at all these units by Jaedong that weren't devoted to any contain here or here. Just kept all of them back to be anti-harassment. Because really all Jaedong needs to do is this sort of thing. Preventing these expansions from connecting by preventing units from glooping up here in the middle. Once they do begin the gloop, that's when Jaedong swoops in for the kill. Remember these words. Clean, just demolishing finish. Good game. Now we're going to unmute the chat, so that way we have a little bit of time to get questions. Guys, you can go ahead and chat. So now is where we're going to ask a handful of questions about either of the Bisu vs. Jaedong games. If you have any questions, post them in yellow. I will see them in yellow. And people are very happy to be able to talk once again. And also in the good news department, we have the Pro League coming on in, I believe, 10 minutes. Oh, okay, Booster just asked a question, that makes me feel a little bit silly, because apparently I have, amnesia, because I said, here's the thing about the way Jaedong loses. And then I didn't tell you, I just changed the subject. So I'm going to answer that question now. What you see is... Jaedong loses in dramatic, epic, incredible games, or Jaedong loses in a way that seems stupid. The All-Star game is an example of a game that maybe seems stupid, or in the Fantasy versus Jaedong game on Medusa, where Fantasy built barracks in the middle, and you're just kind of like, ugh. Or even in these 12-hatch versus 9-pool games that we keep seeing. Oh, I hate it so much. And the reason I think that's significant is it goes to show how important it is to rely on very fragile, very subtle things that if you screw up just a little bit, you will lose. But the idea is that you don't screw them up, and then you don't have to pay to avoid that problem with money. So a very simple example of what I'm talking about is a Terran player against a Zerg. There are lurkers. The Terran player could spend a whole bunch of money on tanks, or the Terran could just have good micro early on. Why do I keep doing this? There's nothing that's quotable about that. The Terran could just have good micro and kill off the lurkers. In other words, the player is exchanging in-game skill for in-game money. He's actually earning money by doing that. So he can use that money on other things. A lot of players, whenever they're trying to do a strategy, will resort to changing things in massive ways, but Jaedong does really, really subtle, slight, minor things that really help him just get a much higher win percentage. Even little things, like in Zerg vs. Zerg in particular, is which in my opinion is the hardest matchup in the game. That is why I think Jaedong is so strong, is because he has just such attention to subtlety. He knows that if he can just take a Zergling out here, or have his Overlord 1 inch north here, then he'll get a few extra wins. Or on Heartbreak Ridge, we see him send his Overlord straight up across his natural and then to the third base, to his second natural, at the corners. Because a lot of Terran players like to build their barracks early on there. So the reason I like these sorts of plays by Bisu, by Jaedong is because they're the sort of things that create a few other inconveniences that can be solved by just being better, and by having more slight minor adjustments. So when I do more casts of Jaedong games, I'm going to highlight a lot of those because they're really, really brilliant. And anytime he screws up one of them, that's when you get one of those dumb losses that people go, oh, why didn't Jaedong prepare for that? Why is it so hard? That's like impossible. I can't not do that. So I'm just going to move on to the next question. Okay, a question by Janelin was their game plans rearranged in different ways in the two games? If so, how? That's a great question. That's exactly what we saw in both games. In Game 1, we saw Bisu doing a very standard Corsair into Templar play, but he incorporated some early Zealot harassment, which brought him the victory in the later stages. Or we saw in this game, right here, we saw that Jaedong opened up with an early Hydralisk push. In other words, he's getting all those upgrades for Hydralisk early on, and then just transitioning right in to the standard 5 hatchery play that ended up winning him the game. And that's the sort of thing that's really nice to think about. Anytime you want to do some new little attack or do something in the early or mid-game, think about how to switch that back into the mid-game that you want to do. That could be a totally normal mid-game, or it could be a totally weird mid-game. In this game, we saw Bisu go for an early Corsair Reaver play. And that allowed him to take the expansion a little bit earlier, and it also made him be super aggressive all throughout the mid-game. Not your usual sort of Protoss versus Zerg. But that's totally fine. That sort of rearrangement is what's really interesting, is whenever you incorporate some little harassment, to think about how that flows into your game plan. All right, more questions. Someone said, how do you play and analyze at the same time? The answer is that I don't. That's actually a really good question. I do not play and analyze at the same time. I analyze my replays outside of the game and think really hard about what it is I want to do. And then when I sit down in the game, all my focus is on doing that. Because what you don't want to have happen in a game is to hit a point where you go, well, what do I want to do now? And then go, okay, I've decided what I want to do. Now, how do I do that? And then you have to worry about, all right, now I got to not screw that up. So let's try to do that. That's hard. That's a lot of work. I just want to sit down and go, and just click a bunch of buttons really fast and do what I know I wanted to do. So that's why I rewatch every single replay and try to look for some key moment, and why when I watch these games, I look for what I thought was oh my god, if that had happened differently, it would have gone this way. It's a good thing to think about how analyzing is so important. So someone said, hey Day9, hello. And the spamming is moving his question. Maybe I'll never find it again. Yeah, I said, hey Day9, Jaedong and most players currently favor the current Muta sniping build. However, in my games, I go for a ground army with fast drop. Is that viable? The immediate answer is that if it feels viable, definitely keep trying to do it. That's an entirely reasonable way to play. What I would say is that in the standard Hydralisk Mutalisk combination, what you're trying to do is get a big ground army with Hydralisks and then kill the Templar so that your Hydralisk can burn through the rest of the army. If you're going for a drop-oriented play, that would be you're spending all your gas on that sort of thing. You'd be having a little more gas to get upgrades, a little more gas to get lurkers. You'd be focusing on letting him get Storm, but hopefully punishing his economy so much that the army's a little bit smaller. So you're starting to see the relationship between those. One is, fine, get a big army, but you don't get Templar because I have Mutalisks. The other one is, okay, fine, get Templar, but you're not going to get a big army because I'm going to be harassing you so much. Keep trying a lot of variations. A lot of... Here's a good game to watch, is I really liked By Hero against Bisu on Medusa, where By Hero was at the bottom left, Bisu was at the top left. By Hero went almost exclusively Hydralisks and then did a big Doom drop that was really effective. What was another game? There was a really recent game on El Nino. I believe it was Zhongbi against some Zerg dude. I know that Zhongbi Eventually went on to play some Terran dude that can't remember either of them. But go into the small VOD thread of Team Liquid and look up Zhongbi on El Nino. Zhongbi started at the north position. Zerg player, another sort of aggressive harass. Oh yeah, it was Quanro. Quanro or Roro or Zero. I don't even remember. I'm not even going to try. Something like that. Look up one of those names. So yes, that's my answer to that question. Look at those games. Drops are awesome. Go for it. Someone said, Day 9, Ultralisks or Defilers versus P? Another interesting question. And unfortunately, I'm only going to answer one more question after this one because the matches are going to be on in 1 minute. So the question was, Defilers or Ultralisks first? Depends a lot on what went on earlier and what your unit composition is. And in particular, the resource distribution that I have. So for instance, on Blue Storm, I'll generally end up with not so much gas because I only really have 3 easily takeable geysers, including the main. So I end up with a lot of Zerglings and Lurkers, and then the Defilers are a very natural progression. For an example game of that, Jaedong vs. Stork on Blue Storm in the Star League Finals, Game 4. Really, really great example of Defiler usage. A lot of times, if I'm going for a super gas-heavy style, and I just happen to have a lot of gas, I'm going to slam out a bunch of Ultralisks like that. Really depends on unit composition. What I would say, here's a better answer to it. Ultralisks are just so easy, because what happens is that you have horrible macro, and then you go, oh, well, I have like 5,000 minerals, 5,000 gas. Well, I'm going to hit SU like twice, and then I've spent all my money, and I win. But of course, when you get better and better, and you have better macro, you don't exactly have that much money. So a really good thing, if you're not very good at Zerg vs. Protoss, start trying to use Defilers. Really great unit. You'll be shocked at how amazing Lurkers under Swarm can be. So finally, the last question, and my sincerest apologies to those who I skipped. Shadow's trying very hard. He's typing in bold, italics, and underline, and he says, do you think the Dark Archon will be the key... one of these questions. Do you think the Dark Archon will become a key unit in the evolution of the PvZ meta game? Maelstrom is very effective versus Mutalisks. It's also very strong versus Hive. I mean, I think it'll get there when the issue is the late game. Because right now, I think that the issue is in the early game. Because I remember I had a friend who was sitting behind me, and he was watching a Zerg vs. Protoss. And it was, I think, you normally get Corsairs around the 6-minute mark, 6 minutes and 30 seconds for Protoss. So it's 6-7 minutes into the game. The Protoss has 1 cannon, Zerg has 2 Zerglings, and both of them were just building a whole bunch of stuff and not attacking. And he was like, Jesus, why is no one attacking each other? And I had to be like, metagame. I did that dodge. And that clearly is the problem right now that Protoss players are having, is that the Zerg is aware that Protoss isn't going to do any aggression, so they just power. They just make a bazillion billion drones. So now what we're starting to see is more Protosses put huge pressure on Zerg. They put huge pressure in the mid game with any sort of early push, and that sort of thing. But I think later on, when the problem becomes the late game, because Zergs maybe aren't having a good enough time getting an economy going early on, and they have to start relying on cutesy units like Defilers and Mutalisks, maybe then we'll start seeing Dark Archons pop up for Maelstrom. And that other spell, Feedback. Maybe might see that. And that wraps up my hour of the Day 9 Daily. Thank you for tuning in to the 2 Day 9 Dailies. We got over 500 viewers in there, and you're the best. Thanks so much, guys. Cheers.